It's been almost exactly 5 years, I think, since you released the Programmer's Oath. I saw your blog post from November 18th, 2015. That's a piece that heavily inspired our own code of conduct. So my question would be, to start things off, is there something you'd want to change to that Programmer's Oath if you want to do it, if you have to do it again today? Do you think it's still needed in the industry to have this oath?
Well, first of all, yes, it's certainly needed, or some kind of professional commitment is needed. The reason I put forth an oath was as an example of what a professional commitment might look like. I didn't intend it to be the oath. I figured that many other people would have inputs into it. I would love to see your code of conduct, as a matter of fact. Perhaps it's got some ideas that should be included. Would I add anything to it now? I don't know if I would change much of the oath right now, although I'd love to see what you guys did. Maybe you've got some ideas that could be added. But from my point of view, the oath covered the issues that I thought were important. I'm in the midst right now of writing a book that talks about the oath as one part of the book. So any input you've got, I'd love to hear.
Well, a couple of things stood out. One of the things I really wanted us to focus on is one of the police that says, I quote, "I will fearlessly and relentlessly improve my creations at every opportunity." We work with a ton of developers. We're developers ourselves, but I want to hear it from you. What do you think the fears that you talk about are the ones that are the most common in developers? What do you think developers fear the most?
What do developers fear the most? That's a really interesting question. Most developers fear the deadline. Most developers consider themselves to be always under unreasonable pressure, unreasonable time frame pressure. And so developers will often fear to do the things that they know would speed them up, but they fear might slow them down. It's a very interesting, self-contradictory kind of fear. And I often talk about it this way. Imagine a programmer bringing code up on their screen, and they're horrified at what they see. The code is terrible. And their first thought is, maybe I should clean this up a little bit. And the very next thought in their mind is, I'm not going to touch it. Because they know if they touch it, they'll break it. If they break it, it becomes theirs forever, and they're not going to risk that. It's just too much for them to risk, given that the pressures are such as they are. And so the developer in that case is too fearful to do the one thing that would actually make the entire team go faster, and that is to clean up the code a little bit.
Got it. Is it more like assuming responsibility over one thing and making sure that you're able to pull the others towards that goal of yours and that vision that's related to that piece of code?
I don't know if it's taking responsibility. I mean, it is taking responsibility for that particular piece of code. It's also taking responsibility just in general for keeping the code base clean. And programmers are often afraid to do that because they know there's a time commitment there and they don't feel like they've got the time. Obviously, if they did take that responsibility and if they did take the time, the whole team would be going faster. But that's the dilemma that the normal developer faces.
I guess it's the question of finding that one leader in a team that can stir things up and just kind of align everybody behind a more robust approach, right? Which means making sure that that code is well written and solid.
Well, I think a leader is important there. If there is someone on the team who has a vision of the professionalism and the ethics and the standards of the team, then that leader can get everyone else to join into that vision. We don't see an awful lot of that. We do see technical leaders very frequently, but we don't see an awful lot of that kind of ethical leader that takes a team and guides them along an ethical path. the notion of ethics in software is almost non-existent.
Interesting. What do you think that is?
Well, first of all, it's not taught. Universities, we don't teach anything about ethics in software. And secondly, this is an impossibly young industry. It is less than one person's lifetime old. I mean, the first line of code on an electronic computer was written 76 years ago. Right. So we just haven't really had the time to develop this notion of ethics. We've also not had the need until maybe the last 20 years. Prior to 20 years ago, software was not a huge part of the average person's life. Nowadays, we're surrounded by software. Everything is software. And that has happened in the last 20 years. There's nothing you can do in our society without software being smack in the middle of it. And most people don't realize that. And even most programmers don't really realize that. But our society as a whole now cannot exist without software, cannot exist without programmers.